WNST, Taos and Baltimore for Game 5 on Sunday night. There will be smarter people and better people than I probably writing books about it. I'll call Tim Wendell later in the week. He tends to write books about these kinds of World Series. But nonetheless, the Los Angeles Dodgers, they were up, they were down, they were back, they were fourth, they were eliminated, they were in. They almost could have been eliminated in back-to-back nights because the Astros had a late lead in Game 4 and blew it. Luke Jones joins us now to discuss baseball. And I guess in a way, we begin at spring training. It feels like it's around the corner. I had a friend ask me about Sarasota the other day and getting down there. And it's a long season. There's a lot of games. And all you hope for when you get to the World Series that it's not 28 degrees and snowing sideways because it is November at this point, Luke. But I tell you what, late into the night on Sunday night, well after the Steelers defeated the Detroit Lions, there was some special stuff happening at 1 a.m. and at 1:41 a.m. when this baseball game ended East Coast time.
I don't even know where to begin. I mean, this is right up there. I mean, we thought Game 2 was great, right? I mean, there have been some very entertaining games throughout this postseason and in this World Series. And to see what we witnessed well into the morning, Monday morning, with Game 5, just incredible. It's certainly right up there with some of the great World Series games that you can think of. And I don't even know if I'd call it great as much as just completely wild. 5 hours, 17 minutes to play 10 innings. I mean, that right there is pretty crazy. But the theater was amazing. Clayton Kershaw has a 4-run lead and then a 3-run lead separately and can't protect those. Just, the strike zone all over the place, walks. With the strike zone being as huge as it was, you had 25 runs scored. I mean, it was...
The baseball's juice. Don't forget that part. You left that part out. That's true.
That's another... Well, and that's another part of the discussion. Whether intentional or manufacturer error, and you have too many proud people at Major League Baseball not wanting to admit it. But
well, there's not a pitcher or a pitching coach in either one of these clubhouses or a player that looks and touches the baseball and says it feels like a regular baseball. That should alarm everyone, right? There's 50 guys, and 50 baseball players said that's not the ball we play with.
Right. And look, I don't think it's any intentional conspiracy. I think it's a quality control issue of the baseballs made in, Costa Rica? But regardless, what we've witnessed here over this World Series and really over this postseason, and keep in mind, 2017 in general was a record year for home runs. To see what we saw all come to a head on Sunday night, that was as incredible as anything I'd seen. I'm typically the type who likes more of a pitching duel in that situation. But
13-12 is a football score, field goals, right?
Yeah, especially in the NFL with offense being down this year a bit. It's just incredible. And, this is a game we're going to be talking about for a long time.
All right, so 5 games into this thing, you'd like to see some sort of balance where what you saw over the first 162 would hold up. Like Verlander holding up perhaps in Game 6 on Tuesday night at Dodger Stadium. Certainly Kershaw. You want to see that hold up. You want to see the guys who hit. You want to see the guys who run. I don't know that it's been that kind of series at all, right? It's this wacky offense. The pitching's out of whack. We knew the Astros bullpen was suspect. We didn't know how suspect, but when Kenley Jansen's, the one who's getting victimized here, that's not what you're expecting to find in October or November at this stage of the game, right?
Yeah, and that's part of the beauty of it. Certainly the baseballs are a big part of the discussion. I don't want it to become too much a part of the discussion because, again, we're also talking about a small sample size here, and crazy things can happen, and crazy things have happened in the past. But, yeah, when you look at Kenley Jansen and you've seen him scored in his last 3 outings when this guy had the type of season that wasn't quite at the level of Zach Britton a year ago, but it was that amazing. It was something that historic. He was that good over the course of the season, and to see him give up runs in each of the last 3 times he's pitched, that's incredible in and of itself. It's just, I mentioned Kershaw. Any of these pitchers that have had specifically had issues throwing the slider, and a lot of people point to that with the baseball.
Well, Darvish, that was his complaint, right?
Oh, yeah. And let's remember a couple other things, too. It's been incredibly hot in Los Angeles, Games 1 and Game 2. And in Houston, even though that park overall actually plays a little bit towards the pitching, if you go look right down the lines, that certainly favors the hitters. And look at some of the home runs that were hit on Sunday night. You're talking about balls hit right down the line, 325 feet, 330 feet, 335 feet. It's not as though there were balls being hit out to the gaps in dead center as much. These were more the types of batted balls that really play well at Minute Maid Park. So, but you're right, though. I mean, we went into this series thinking, okay, Houston's bullpen has been a mess, including their closer, who had kind of held it together earlier in the postseason, but we've seen that. Instead, he wasn't going to use him as his closer. I mean, that's where they are with their bullpen. The Dodgers had been so incredibly like that. I mean, not just Kenley Jansen, but everyone else in that bullpen, including some guys that typically have been pretty nondescript over the course of their respective careers, and you've seen them melt down. I mean, as far as Sunday night, I don't really fault Brandon Morrow. I mean, you're talking about a guy that was asked to pitch a fifth time in 6 days. I mean, that's a bit much. That's a lot for Dave Roberts to ask of him, and he pitched accordingly, giving up 4 runs, not retiring a batter. But you're right. I mean, there's a whole. When you go into a series like this, you like to think what's right is right, what's left is left, and there are at least some things you know. And but the only thing you know about this series is these teams are going to pound the baseball. And I saw a lot of people making comparisons to video games. Saw a lot of people making comparisons to college baseball in the 90s and early 2000s, where you'd see games like this every game over the course of that tournament. But it's been wild. I don't know if it's the best baseball I've ever seen, but it has certainly been entertaining and something we're not going to forget anytime soon.
Racism came up in this thing. Imagine that in sports over the weekend with Gurriel making slanted eye jokes at Darvish. I mean, this almost skips the American culture, right? This is about the Latin culture and the Asian culture coming together, and our American culture saying, that's not really cool to do that unless you're the president of the United States. Then you can say or do anything to anybody. But in this case, with the reporters asking about it, people trying to explain culture, and then people watching it on TV being sort of mortified, thinking I wouldn't want my 12-year-old son doing that to the other pitcher in a Little League dugout. That's another little ugly part of this. I mean, we heard racism in baseball when it came to Adam Jones in Boston. You would not think that players would be saying that, and certainly in the National Football League, I don't think you'd hear N-bombs at the bottom of a pile, right? Like, that would probably be some big problems in the NFL. But in baseball, they let him come back and play. They're going to suspend him next year. Manfred coming under heat for sort of addressing it, but not really addressing it. And then Gurriel had a huge night in Game 5.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, obviously it's unacceptable to see something like that. I mean, I heard Rob Manfred kind of outlined his 4 reasons. One of them was he'll actually lose salary when he serves it at the beginning of next year. You do have the case of, you have the possibility of a grievance, even though it sounds like Gurriel's probably not going to appeal. There was something to the idea of saying he didn't want to punish the rest of the players on the Astros. I mean, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people want bloodlust right away and say, sit him down right away. He needs to be punished, and he will be punished, and it certainly is something that you don't want to see. I guess I was most impressed, with the way that Darvish handled it. With the way that Carlos Beltran on the Astros kind of was a vessel to kind of make peace between the two of those individuals. I mean, you hate seeing this. I mean, it was something that is completely unacceptable. I mean, as you mentioned, regardless of it being a Cuban-born player and a Japanese player and not a white guy, or how we in America typically tend to think of racism. But it's still something that was uncomfortable to see. And, I think one thing I really liked about Sunday night's game was what the ugliness that developed with that story. Sunday night's game overshadowed that. I didn't want this World Series to be defined by that. I mean, my goodness. I mean, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not being dismissive of it, but I didn't want to see a World Series where it was strictly defined by, a Cuban player making that gesture towards a Japanese pitcher, and just being a lot of hurt feelings about that, rightfully so. I mean, the decision to push it off, it's not surprising. I mean, Roberto Alomar. I mean, you think about him way back when. I mean, that suspension was pushed off until the start of the following season. It's not shocking that it turned out that way. Certainly, I'll hear the argument that it should have been served immediately, but I'm not going to be up in arms that it's not served immediately. I mean, just look at our legal system. I mean, someone commits a crime, they don't go to jail immediately. There's due process, and that plays out that way.
Well, let me say this. The deeper part of the issue for me isn't even the racism, or it's the need to taunt from the dugout, right? Like that's at the heart of the thing is I hit the home run off of you. Now let me pull your pants down, demean you, deface you, taunt you, say something about the way you look, the way you throw, who your wife is, who your mother is, whatever it is. That is the part of the video game part of sports that the old man in me and the old man in my old man and to get off my lawn that I don't understand. I mean, I saw a guy catch a touchdown late in the day on Sunday, and he walked right toward the guy he just caught the touchdown over, stood over him, and they popped grills on their helmets, and there was no flag. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what is taunting? I mean, do you have to say something about the guy's mother or drop an F-bomb to be a taunt? I mean, taunting is demonstrative. Taunting is very obvious, I think, to anyone that's witnessing it. And I think that that's the problem I have with it. That if you're not taunting from the dugout, you can't be racial. You can't be anything because you're not taunting. And we'd like to teach our children to not taunt. That would probably be the first place to start with that story. And that's the first thing I got out of it when I saw it. I tweeted about the taunting aspect of it and the need to taunt or the emotion that I want to taunt you after I hit a home run.
Yeah, and I think that we've talked about this. I mean, even I can remember talking to you about the World Baseball Classic back in March with the bat flips. And as much as I am okay with the idea of baseball players showing a little bit more emotion, I think it's important to remember it is a game. It is okay to have fun. But at the same time, when you do allow bat flips, and in the NFL, we've seen expanded celebrations being allowed starting here in 2007.
Steelers looked like they were practicing all week to celebrate more than scoring touchdowns, I think.
It's amazing, right? But, the Ravens did their bowling pin celebration on Thursday night. But the other side of that argument as far as saying, okay, it's having fun, don't take yourself so seriously. I'll hear that, but what you present and what ended up happening, and look, I mean, this is way different than someone just flipping a bat or pumping their fist or someone doing a dance in the end zone on Sundays. But it does pose the question of how far is too far. When do you get from a point of you're celebrating versus you are showing up and trying to embarrass and taunt and humiliate your opponent. And that's not okay in my mind. I mean, again, it was very unfortunate to see that. I hope this guy learns his lesson big time. He is going to serve a suspension. I won't argue with anyone who says it should be immediate. I don't have a strong argument to say that it's not. I know Rob Manfred kind of gave his 3 or 4 reasons why it's not going to be immediate, but I was glad that on Sunday night it was about the play on the field and not about that. And Gurriel certainly contributed to the Astros, but it'd be hard to say that they won solely because of him when you're talking about 13 runs being scored on that side over the course of the game.
He's also 33 years old and from Cuba, right? I mean, this is not a 19-year-old kid. Puig obviously plays the game differently, and I think the Cuban players, this is a Cuban issue as much as it's an American issue, right? Like, there it's kind of okay. And apparently Darvish didn't feel like it was ultra disrespectful, that it's not the first time he's heard, the phrase "little Chinese boy," which is how, it sort of translates when it's translated to English, but there really is a difference in the way the game is played around the world, as we saw in the World Baseball Classic, and I'm sure this will be something that will be spotlighted, something baseball is going to have to take a look at in the offseason. Meanwhile, We go to Game 6 here, and, it's going to be Verlander and Hill. Hard to dislike Verlander in sort of this Jack Morris role, right? This, Kurt Schilling, give me the ball, let me win the whole thing. But I have no doubt this thing's going to go 7 at this point. I just feel like it's meant to go 7.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I mean, everything about this on paper looks like you'd say, okay, Justin Verlander is going to complete a historic, his Jack Morris, his Madison Bumgarner, whatever great name you want to throw out there as far as great performances of the World Series lore, postseason lore. Verlander's been that great, but at the same time, Clayton Kershaw was exceptional in the opener and had a 4-0 lead, and then a 7-4 lead on Sunday night, and his demons as far as not being as good in the postseason resurfaced.
Yeah, man, we sit here and talk about Game 6, but Kershaw and Keuchel, if I would have told you that game was going to be 13-12 on regular rest, not Game 4, Game 5, they all had rest. It's inconceivable, right?
Yeah, well, but that's what makes the game great, and that's where I'll put aside the baseball argument. With that issue, things like that happen, and that's what it makes the game beautiful. I mean, it really does. I mean, if it always played out the way you expect it to, it'd be really boring. Buck Showalter likes to say that, and it's so true. Look at the NFL on a weekly basis. Sunday night, this series has been a perfect example of that. Of everything you think you just throw out over the course of the next 3 or 4 hours, or in the case of Sunday night, 5 hours, 17 minutes. But I'm with you. As much as you look at that and say Verlander, close it out, complete a great World Series, a complete historic postseason for him. This series deserves a 7th game. It does. I don't really have a dog in this fight. I've just been sitting back and watching just outstanding baseball, weird baseball. We didn't even talk about the fact that Dave Roberts called for a bunt in the top of the 7th inning in a game like this. Really, just incredible. But this series deserves a 7th game, and as much as I've loved watching Justin Verlander pitch over the course of this postseason and really his entire run with the Astros since being dealt at the end of the waiver deadline. It's just been terrific, but I'm rooting for a Dodgers win and a Game 7 on Wednesday night. No better way for this baseball season to end than that.
Last thing for you, Luke, on the baseball side, and we'll get to some football and talk about the weekend and talk about the Ravens going to Nashville and talk about our party at Piranhas in Nashville on Friday and Saturday this week. But hiring of managers, we're getting to the end of that now. All of this Buck Showalter to the Phillies, which we believed all along was nonsense and scuttlebutt because of Angelos and because of the way things are. They're going to hire Gabe Kapler. The Nationals hired Dave Martinez. The Red Sox made their hire last week as well. Butts are getting in seats here from the managerial standpoint. And, we're going to have the Wild Wild West opening up here in a couple of weeks, especially for the Orioles, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're at as we can see the light at the end of the tunnel with the World Series coming to an end. I mean, this is when business picks up. I mean, World Series marks the start of free agency. The end of the World Series marks the start of free agency. I mean, you have a few more days, and then the players start to file. So business is going to pick up, as you mentioned. I mean, most of these managerial hires are pretty much set now. I mean, certainly we'll see what the Yankees end up doing, but Gabe Kapler is a really interesting hire for the Phillies, and kind of in the same light as what we're seeing with some of these other hires, where it isn't necessarily the biggest name with the most experience. In some cases, it's trying to find a sabermetric guy, a young guy, a former player who has a good idea of what a clubhouse culture is and has a good idea of what analytics mean and how to apply them to the game.
Well, that's who A.J. Hinch and Dave Roberts are, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you're seeing more of that, and and let's not overlook the fact that a lot of these younger, lesser-known managers you can hire for less money too, and,
sure.
And that's certainly part of the.
Well, I saw the money structure of how much managers are making, and it's really kind of incredible. They need a union, dude. They're underpaid as a group. I dare I say this, in all of sports, I can't think of anybody that's underpaid more than a Major League Baseball manager right now. When I look at what the players make versus what football coaches make versus getting on and off planes, 100 times a year and going to work in February and getting off at the end of October and I'm sort of shocked Major League Baseball managers are making $750,000, to be honest.
Agreed. The only thing I'd say to that, and it's just posing a question, be interesting to see what the pay structure is for the entire front office and scouts and analytic department and all of that compared to what the NFL has or what some other sports have. Just from a standpoint of in this analytics-driven era of baseball, which, isn't anything new at this point. I mean, every team's using them. It's just a matter of which teams use them more extensively and which teams use them more effectively, most importantly. But you're seeing more of an emphasis shifting towards GM and sabermetrics and whatever structure a team has from a scouting standpoint. That would be my only question. How many resources are being devoted to those positions compared to what you think about in a traditional front office structure in other sports? The only idea I'd throw out there, but hard to disagree with you. I mean, and you can make as much argument as you want as far as how important a Major League Baseball manager is as opposed to an NFL coach or an NHL or NBA head coach. But that said, hard not to look at some of those salaries and scratch your head to think, man, I could see maybe not making $10 million a year, but really, you're not getting a little bit more than what they're getting. That's something that's certainly part of the discussion that they should be having moving forward. But definitely the off season about to pick up here very rapidly with the end of the baseball season on play. The on-field play end of the season rapidly approaching.
Luke Jones joining us here. All of it brought to you by DNL Window Tinting. 26 years now of tinting everything. Cars, boats, businesses. They put the shades on the sun. They take the squint away. They're over in Parkville and in White Marsh at DNL Window Tinting. Also, want to give a shout out to Lee Tessier and his great team at Keller Williams American Premier Realty. List your house with Lee and his group at LeeTessier.com, and you risk nothing. His team's going to get your house sold quicker and better. You learn more at Lee Tessier. That's TESSIER.com, especially if you're up in Harford County and up in that White Marsh Northeast section of Baltimore County. Nobody's selling more homes up there and selling them faster than Lee Tessier and his team at Keller Williams American Premier Realty. You can find Luke at Baltimore Luke out on Twitter, as well as Luke at WNST.net. I am Nasty at WNST.net. Together we're out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Don't forget the buyatoyota.com audio vault, always there for anything you miss, and you can listen live by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's all powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. We're there working hard to get you in shape for just $10 a month. There's a Planet Fitness right around the corner from you. And last but never least, if you want breaking news, and there shall be some this week as we try to figure out Joe Flacco's concussion situation, we're going to drill down onto that and all the NFL action this week as the Ravens head to Nashville. We are hosting a weekend-long party on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at Piranha's of downtown Nashville. If you've been to downtown Nashville, you know right where it is, right around the corner from all the good stuff off the strip, about a half block off the strip in downtown Nashville. Beer will be served. The food there is delicious. They have like these donut rolls. It's outrageous. Piranha's Nashville. We'll see you there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. All of the details will be up on social media. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570. And WNST Taos in Baltimore, wiping the sleep out of our eyes from late night baseball. We are WNST.net AM 1570 and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.